rolling. Thanks for pushing the button. Yes, we are here with music from that hotbed of new music, Weaverville, North Carolina. The duo here, the Twilite broadcasters, Adam Tanner, Mark Jackson. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Martin. Thanks for having us.
It's great to have you guys both here. I appreciate you sending the disc to us some time back. It's been a few months now.
Yeah.
And you guys met when?
We met 2.5 years ago in Weaverville and started jamming together and finding we like a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And we're looking to do something that didn't involve a whole band necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a revolutionary thing these days, just a couple of people, but the simplicity and just the ease of organization is awfully nice. So yeah.
Well, the stuff you all do just harkens back to that certain era that's just kind of a watershed moment for a lot of the music we love on WNCW. That's where kind of country music began, and of course bluegrass began, and where a lot of folks kind of got into a lot of the blues scene and all. Those great brother duets, two guys, acoustic instruments, wonderful harmony vocals that blended well together nicely. Feel like a lot of us in music have kind of forgotten that the last few decades, and you guys are bringing it back, and I'm really excited you are, and I'm so glad it's right here in our neck of the woods. We're just up the road in Weaverville.
Cool, yeah.
Thanks. The mandolin, acoustic guitar, and great harmonizing. That's just the seminal sounds that kind of jump-started country and bluegrass and that new thing that came along a few years later called rock and roll.
Yeah.
And was it them? Was it Bill and Charlie Monroe?
Bill and Charlie and Ira and Charlie as well, the Louvens, and Raybon and Alton, the Delmore brothers.
The Delmore brothers, right. Yeah.
And they really had a super kickstart. I mean, they actually went on to play into the 50s, and they were doing some rockabilly stuff that you couldn't distinguish it that much from a lot of the early rock and roll. And so they influenced rock and rollers, and then they actually were influenced by rock and started to do that kind of stuff. And then we both love the Everlys.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Everlys... the Beatles love the Everlys, and so there's that early Beatles stuff is just as good as the old country stuff too. You know, in terms of harmony, singing, and Paul and John were right there in terms of doing that kind of stuff early on.
Yeah, certainly with the harmonies. They got a little off track a little bit though. Because which Beatle played the mandolin? None of them.
Well, Paul's back on the mandolin now.
Is he? Oh, or the ukulele?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. The Leuven brothers, they were mandolin and guitar, but the Delmores too?
Delmores, well, the Delmores did a tenor guitar,
okay,
which we think was tuned like a mandolin. And so the legend is that Doc Watson, when he was younger, was listening to the Delmore brothers records, and he couldn't tell who was taking the lead and who was playing the rhythm. So he, in fact, incorporated both guys' parts into his own playing. So he's a one-man Delmore brothers. You know, when he plays the Delmore Brothers stuff, he's playing what both guys are doing, which is amazing when you think about it.
Cool. So we've got Adam Tanner here on the mandolin and Mark Jackson on the guitar. You both live in Weaverville, and you both just have this love for this great old style, and y'all somehow happen to meet up and happen to be in the same town to do it, and taking it out on the road a little bit.
Yeah, yep. We were in West Virginia last weekend, and we've got a little tour coming up, going over to Cleveland, and by way of Newport, Kentucky. Got a few shows out in that direction.
All right. Now, Mark, you've got some roots in Kentucky. You've worked there for a little while, right?
Yeah, I worked for Apple Shop, the arts and media organization there in Whitesburg, Kentucky.
Yeah. Tell folks a little bit about what Apple Shop does.
Well, Apple Shop, I think it was created primarily to capture the culture of Appalachia through media, essentially. They started out making a lot of documentaries. There are also their music programs. There's a radio station, a community theater group. So lots of things going on there.
Yeah, Apple Shop, and it's APPAL.
That's right.
Just wanted to look it up. You're from Southwest Virginia, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So the Carter family fold, part of your upbringing.
It is definitely.
Yeah, you went there all the time and saw some good names and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I read it was actually the Beatles that probably got you into.
It is, yeah. I grew up listening to old time bluegrass some, but it was the Beatles, and then I kind of went backwards from there after hearing the Leuven brothers.
But you lived in Knoxville too for a time, right?
That's right.
You went to school there anyway.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We reach East Tennessee. Like a lot of great Knoxville listeners. So some band called the Town Criers. You were in, huh?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, alt country.
I'm hearing some people out there go, "Oh yeah, man, I remember the Town Criers. They are no more." When did you move to the Weaverville, Western North Carolina area?
It's been about 3 years now. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Cool. And Adam Tanner, know a little bit more about you because, well, you spent a few years with a band we like here at NCW called the Crooked Jades.
Yeah.
You were there with the middle part of the aughts or whatever we're calling this last decade we were in. But they're a West Coast band.
Right.
And you're a West Coast man originally.
I am.
But you'd been living here in the greater Asheville area for 10 years?
About, yeah. Well, I was a weird kid, you know. I was living in California.
Of course you were.
I was a weird kid. I was living in Northern California where everybody wants to live, but I want to live in the South because I like banjo and fiddle music.
Yeah.
Even as like a junior high kid, I was like listening to Flat and Scruggs and Bill Monroe and all that kind of stuff. I was weird. It was weird. I ran into a guy in junior high who played Scruggs banjo. We had a bluegrass band. We used to play at recess. We were the Slimy River Bottom Boys.
Oh, good name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome to take that if anyone wants to grab it.
Oh, really?
It's not
patented?
Not
copywritten?
trademarked anymore. Yeah, we played at recess time. This is like in the heyday of Aerosmith and Zeppelin and stuff, and we were playing our bluegrass stuff, you know, will the circle be unbroken and stuff at recess time, and boy, people hated us, and they hated it. But, you know, so I did. I looked at pictures of the mountains and went to the library and like read about the history. I was completely obsessed with the South. It just kind of had to happen that I was going to move here.
Yeah.
And then once I moved here, it was like I didn't really experience any culture shock. I was just completely prepared for everything that is the South. You
Yeah.
know? So it worked out great. I love it here.
Good. You were destined
Yeah.
to come here. So you came here, and that gave you a chance to kind of learn at the feet of the masters of some of the folks, right? Joe
Yeah.
Thompson.
Yeah. Been to visit Joe. Been to visit. Well, old time fiddling is a huge part of what I love to do, and that's what I teach, as well as mandolin. And you know, there's a few guys still around playing the old pre-bluegrass style of fiddle. Joe Thompson, Clyde Davenport, Charlie Acuff. These guys are getting pretty. They're getting on. If you want to go visit them now, you know. But I did a little bit of that, and then of course there's some guys that are just 10 years or so older than me that also live in the South, 10 or 15 years older, live down in Chapel Hill, who are master players, who have been playing, you know, not as long as those guys, but they're awfully good. There's a lot of people to learn from here. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking with the Twilite broadcasters here on WNCW. They've got a fine release that is out. It's called Evening Shade. All this great stuff we're hearing, the great brother-style duets on here. And obviously you did a bunch of listening to the old recordings to get it down. And obviously, of course, you know, Adam doing Bill Monroe's part and you doing Charlie on the guitar. But what about the vocals? So you guys keep that as well? You did Bill's part and
Yeah.
you interchange those? or
Yeah,
anything?
we pretty much stick to the way they sang. We try to sing in the keys they sing in, which is not always easy. Depending on which brother duet you're doing. For instance, the Leuven brothers, they both had equally high, pretty high ranges. Ira obviously could sing a bit louder, but they were able to swap parts in the middle of a song, and that's something that bluegrass music modern bluegrass music doesn't have, which kind of harkens back to the old time stuff. The Carter family and people like that, they had swap parts. They wouldn't stay on just the tenor and the lead. They'd sometimes, sometimes Charlie would take the tenor and I would take the lead for a minute, and then they come back. So that's the difference between our harmony, a lot of our harmony singing that we're trying to do, as opposed to the more modern bluegrass stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, our voices are quite different than any of those guys. So
Right.
of course we add our own textures.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's funny to keep going back to the Beatles when we were talking about all this pre-war stuff, but I remember, you know, when I learned that Lennon and McCartney would kind of swap the high parts on a couple of tunes.
Yeah, they did.
And you're saying that, you know, obviously they were so inspired by them, like they were the Chuck Berrys and all.
Yeah.
So maybe they got that from them. It just seemed like a useful thing to do, you know, if
Sure.
one part is better to swap over.
Yeah, exactly. You know, somebody's range at a certain point in the song would be better for one guy than another. They would do that. The other thing is you got to remember that music didn't have as many rules back then in general, and people didn't really talk about it or think about it. They just did. You know, they didn't. Well, you can't do that. You can't do this. So.
Yeah. Do you know who some of the folks or styles that these original folks were inspired by?
Yeah, I mean, I think really one of the very first duets were two guys named Mac and Bob. And their stuff is, boy, it's even hard for me to listen to. I mean, it's raw, yeah. And their stuff it's parlor music. It's kind of like, it's very much, so it doesn't sound like guys from the country, even though they were. It really sounds like 19th century parlor music. It almost sounds like some something some British folks would be singing in their parlor or something.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of this stuff comes from that child ballads and Old English and Scotch-Irish songs. I don't know how much harmony singing that they did over there, if any at all, but certainly the first harmony singers were doing more of that material and kind of more of that flavor. And I really think that Bill and Charlie, were, chronologically, were kind of the first ones to hit big. The Blue Sky Boys were also right around the same time from Hickory.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, from Hickory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking with the Twilite broadcasters on WNCW. They're from Weaverville and talking about some of these old acts from way back in the early, middle 20th century. You can hear a lot of this stuff here on weekends, especially on WNCW. Going Across the Mountains, great old bluegrass, a lot of great contemporary bluegrass, of course, but they break it back to the old stuff sometimes. Mm-hmm. And Sunday morning, the Gospel Truth, some of those great gospel harmonies. And then this old porch on Sundays, a lot of old-time music, fiddle stuff, which I know, Adam, you're real big on in Western North Carolina, but they get into some of these old stuff from the Blue Sky Boys and Delmore Brothers as well. So you all, in making this record, like you say, you really kind of tried to emulate the harmony styles. And what about the musicianship too, the picking?
Yeah. Charlie. A lot of the old players, guitar players, play with a thumb pick, and that's a little different sound. That's what Charlie did on the guitar, and of course Lester Flatt and Carter Stanley played with the thumb pick, coming back from the older tradition. And the thumb pick style is tough. It's tough to get, and so there's a little difference. Mark is using a flat pick. Of course, listeners probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You have to be deep inside to hear it. But as far as like my mandolin playing goes, Bill Monroe had Bill Monroe and Ira Louvin are my favorite mandolin players for different reasons. Bill's playing with Charlie was incredible, so developed. In the beginning, it was so good, so lightning fast, so clean, so interesting. It's already filled with some bluesy stuff that he put in his music later. And what's really fascinating is his playing never really sounded like that again. It was like 2 years or so, and he had a certain style he developed with Charlie and changed it completely. So you've got a lot of guys out there like Mike Compton and Dave Davis and I'm trying to skip Gorman, some other guys doing Monroe's playing as he was already a bluegrass guy and a bluegrass boy. But there's not too many people exploring that really early Monroe playing, which is so complex, and there's so much going on, especially what he was able to do while singing, which I can't do it, and I've never heard anybody be able to do that. And he couldn't really do it again.
Yeah.
There was something about that time in his life where he was on fire, and he just sing and be playing these licks and fills all the time he's singing. Really difficult harmony parts, amazing.
I wonder what it was.
I don't know. Just something to prove, I guess.
He was either really in love or really heartbroken.
and then Ira's playing was so fluid and sweet and beautiful and just it's just it just makes you, his mandolin playing just makes you feel good. It just he had a beautiful tone. He used the old Gibson A mandolins with the oval hole. And, no one's really picked that up and moved along with it. Everyone's going for a more gutsy sound. Mm-hmm. And Ira really had a lyrical fluidity about his playing that I'm trying to explore a little bit in my playing. So.
And so you spent a lot of time with the two of you playing and just great jamming and stuff. You do a lot of teaching, like I said, of mandolin, fiddle, and guitar around the Weaverville area. And you, Mark, what do you do when you're not?
Actually, I do fundraising for South Wings, which is a conservation organization.
Oh, okay.
Located in Asheville, but we have a group of volunteer pilots that fly the media, other conservation groups over like environmental issues in the Southeast.
That sounds very important. Cool.
Yeah, it's good work.
It's good thing to do. Cool. Well, you guys put out this album, Evening Shade, and some Monroe Brothers, Louvin Brothers, Everly Brothers, Adam Tanner on the mandolin there, and Mark Jackson on guitar. Mark, Adam, thanks a lot for coming in here.
Thanks for having us, Martin.
Us, yeah.
Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dennis Jones, our technical director. We send it up to Roland Duroff, our afternoon host.